Welcome, everybody, back to our marathon, back to one of those cool interviews. And I'm very, very happy to have somebody here who is known for a lot of things. First of all, let's talk about his band. Let's talk about A Place to Bury Strangers. Oliver Ackermann, thanks for joining
Hey,
our show.
yeah, thanks so much for having me.
And the first question that we always ask, is there any kind of band merch shirt that you would like to drop right now, something special that you're wearing? And I'll give you a minute while you're thinking about it. I drop my band shirt of the day, Great Falls, one of
Yeah,
my
totally.
favorite noise rock bands at the moment.
Mine is Lunacy shirt. It's one of these sick bands that's on our label. If you all don't know Lunacy, it's freaking badass. Definitely check him out. It's a wicked performance, dark, industrial, amazing.
Interesting that you are wearing Lunacy. Lunacy was my first review after 18 years of pausing.
Oh
So,
shit,
oh my
amazing.
goodness, that is like
Yeah, awesome.
yeah,
It's so good. So yeah, everyone should check it out if you haven't. It's amazing.
yeah. Now, you already mentioned in our little pre-recording chat, you're on the road. Where are you at the moment?
Yes, we're in Poland on the way to Warsaw.
And where were you last night?
We're in Rockall, Poland. So
Okay.
I know I'm saying that wrong, but
Yeah.
it was amazing. It was in this crazy industrial like building space with I don't know. It was wild. Really good people, good crowd.
Yeah. Yeah, don't worry about the language. I've been going to Poland for the last 12 years straight, and I still
Yeah,
hardly speak a word. It's just too complicated. For all our
yeah,
Polish friends out there, we love you, but
yes.
maybe try to
Dzień
get a
dobry. Yeah,
Dzień
there you go.
dobry. Kocham cię.
Yeah,
Daj
there you go.
pieniądze. I
Yeah,
love you. Give me your money.
yeah, yeah,
Um, yes. So, Oliver, by the way,
yes,
being German, I of course have to ask that. There are German roots in your family, aren't there?
yeah. It's Swiss German. So
Ah,
it's like Swiss German and Hungarian. I know not quite, as you would like, maybe. But yeah,
no, 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 no. That's
Ackermann
totally
name
fine.
comes from Swiss Germany. It's awesome. Yeah, it's great.
And do you still speak German, or is that already such a long time ago? Ooh, and
Just
very
Sandra in
was.
the group. Yeah, there you go.
What do you say? Sorry.
Not me, just Sandra in the group. So yeah,
Okay.
I do not. Yes.
Yeah, another one of those difficult languages. Forget about it. I have a question, and I have to take some time to build it. Are you yourself a guy for a kind of programmatic approach to music?
I don't have any necessary approach. I'm a type of guy who likes to do different things and try things in different ways, and and they all. I think you'll hear that there's like a thread that kind of goes through lots of A Place to Bury Strangers music,
Yes.
and that's because it's like comes from the aesthetics and the things that we really like. But a lot of the albums were recorded in very different ways with different people taking different approaches to writing music, and I don't know, if like a matter of just not being sure of which way works or the interest in different ways and different methods, but
Mm-hmm.
um, I don't know. I like to go on different adventures I've never been on before.
Then I have to ask whether the title of the new record, Synthesizer, whether that is just a kind of tongue-in-cheek thing for you, or whether you want to show a certain direction that you're going.
I mean, kind of rec. So
Sorry?
sort of like anti
Mhm.
using. I've always been so anti using synthesizers in our music in a way, and just trying to do everything with guitars.
Exactly.
And when we were doing this, I guess maybe I finally broke it, and I think a synthesizer could be punk music too, maybe.
Yeah. And I think I hope I'm right. The
Or
first thing you
the
hear
album
on the
cover,
record. Sorry, you go
yeah,
ahead.
that you hear all over the record. To make a lot of sounds on this record. and it just kind of seemed like a point at which it was time for like a new birth of a new beginning.
Mm-hmm. That is definitely recognizable. And just to make it clear, the first thing that we hear on synthesizer is a synthesizer, isn't it?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, you hear that. You hear blistering guitar. I mean, you hear a lot of things all at once. It's like,
Yeah,
it's so insane you can barely tell what exactly is going on. But
that's
that's
true.
kind of part of the fun and the excitement. Hanging on for
Yeah.
dear life, trying to comb through the fog or something, you know. So
And it's very interesting. You've mentioned that you have tried to stay away from synthesizers for a very, very long time. How did it happen that you now said, okay, now the band is more than 20 years in the making. Let's do this.
I think it's kind of the state of music in sort of a way. I guess I've just been getting more and more into a lot of bands who are doing this kind of cool creative, sort of rejected it and thought like, oh, people are kind of taking sort of this kind of easy way out, or there's not
Mm-hmm.
this like for this kind of guitar punk music and stuff that's sort of disappeared. But now I think that we're in like a whole new era of music, kind of even anyways, where the walls of a lot of genres have destroyed the sort of
Yeah.
like, the ideas about this stuff maybe aren't even so important anymore. And what really people need is just sort of excitement in music,
Yeah.
and I think and this kind of thrill. And so, there's even so many awesome bands that I've heard that are so thrilling and adventurous with synthesizers and all of this stuff. It's seemed like it was the right time to just sort of give up that kind of thing and not worry about that. And
Mm.
maybe there's something more into the core, rather than it just be some sorts of limitations, which actually can, make this, translate this music and this feeling.
It's very interesting what you're saying because it basically leads me to two questions. You've spoken about excitement. First of all, is it just my imagination or just my weird kind of understanding music? But this record to me is much more for the feet than for the head. Is there something like it? I think it's very danceable.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's I don't know. It was maybe written with this sort of like excitement in the what's going on in the future and what we're kind of like looking forward to. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't know. I guess that's my head wasn't even in such like a fucked up place when writing this, so maybe there's a lot more of that. Like, hey, let's just have a good time with music more than I'm pissed off at the world and listen to what I have to say.
Yeah. And second question, because I had the chance to see you on stage a few months ago when you were playing here in my hometown in Aschaffenburg, you integrated a modular synth set into the middle of the hall, basically. Um,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that is also a very exciting part for you, right?
For sure, that is such a thrill. And I mean, that's, you connecting with the different people in the band so much. It's like you're connecting with the crowd, feeding off of these things that are happening. We're just making up songs right there on the spot. It's such
Yeah.
a free, amazing thing. I mean, I would recommend anyone to do that, whether it just be with your family or whatever or something, but sort of the joy of just sort of letting yourself go. And you really kind of get that when you're there right in the crowd with the people. It's
Yeah.
broken down these barriers, and it's not about, what is the, I don't know, kind of what's this sort of performance or something. And as well as sort of like you're really exposing yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
you have to be like, okay, when you're on stage, you're sort of can be in your own head. You can be behind whatever or something, some sort of lights or some sort of thing. But when you're out there in the crowd, like if you're failing, you're looking right into the eyes of the people who are looking at you and maybe
Yeah.
disappointed or something. And it's like that's not what you want to be at a show with. You
Yeah.
want to be there with people who are having a freaking good time.
Yeah. That is also something that I witnessed at the concert because I still remember there were two women who basically took over some kind of drumming duty with your drummer, and it was so cool to see the interaction between the three of them. That was a very, very. It's here we come back to so like being a programmatic person. That is something that you cannot program, right? That is something that you have no influence on.
Yeah, for sure.
How did your bandmates react when you came up with that idea of doing something like this in the middle of a crowd?
It's varied. Sometimes people are a little scared, or sometimes they're a little reluctant. But I think once that they always do it, they realize this is fun and exciting. And everyone has been like really gracious. And we're lucky that no one's done anything like completely uncalled for or something. And it's powerful. So I think that everybody is super excited to do it. But I think that there's been moments of where there was like reluctancy, or even people that we're traveling with where they'll be like, hey, look, all there is mud out there, are you sure we should go out into the crowd? And I'm always like, yes, that is where we're going, and I'll be the first one to roll around in the mud.
So you also do that at open air concerts?
Yeah, sure, anywhere we possibly can, unless they absolutely say no, and then sometimes we'll drag it off the stage into the crowd.
And I guess the only condition that has to have it needs to be some pretty, I don't want to say dry, but it should be like at least not raining from above, right? So that the thing still works.
I don't mind getting electrocuted.
Okay. With all these new things for a place to bury strangers, was that also something where you somehow felt a certain necessity to keep it fresh for yourself?
Always. We're always trying to do that. We always play different sets every single night. We're always trying to do different things, play different kinds of versions of songs and all sorts of things. And I mean, I don't know if it's even, it probably is a necessity, but it's also just a want and a desire. I like to hear someone actually creating something real. When you see things where it's like it's the exact same show every night, and some bands sound perfect every night, just kind of, I don't know, that's like not the kind of the world and the thrill of like, live music that I kind of grew up with and was excited about. I like seeing like, usually you buy a live record and you hear some bad renditions of some songs, but there's some bands where you get the live record and it sounds fucking awesome. It's like you can feel the frickin', the sweat and the taking the songs to the next level and pushing things, or you see people do these performances, and that's, I feel like, the point of live music. I feel like you have a chance to crank music up louder than they're listening to it at their house. You can do different things and change the environment to really with I don't know, the show, and just make sort of things better. You can work with other artists too, like it's kind of like there's a real collaboration between people on stage doing this, who all have their own strengths. You can work with someone who is using lights to change the environments, and you can use all of this stuff. And I think that that's just, I don't know, the world is a better place when different artists come together.
So that also indirectly concludes that you would never play to a click track.
I mean,
or a programmed show.
Yeah, I don't think so. But I'm never going to say never. Who knows? Maybe there's something really interesting that could happen with that. But yeah, anytime I've ever attempted to do that, it just kind of sucks the energy out of it. And for me, so I don't know. Yeah.
So would you say that this, I mean, like working with a click track or a programmed set, it demands a lot of concentration on getting everything right to the second. Would you say that for yourself at the moment, that kind of concentration kills inspiration?
I don't know. I've seen people do that really great and really well as well too. And I've seen plenty of artists who really take that and embrace that. I think there's just different types of people, and some people kind of flow towards this stuff and other people kind of don't, so it also just kind of depends on the music too. I think our music is kind of like raw and wild, and
Yeah.
those are the things that really excite me when you can't tell where this sound is, where it's coming from. It sounds like the guitar or the bass is blowing out of who knows what tower of speakers, and that's kind of the thrill and sort of how things are sort of haphazard and the struggle and stuff, which is kind of awesome. And but for other people, it's so awesome how it's like perfectly rhythmic, and that's kind of what you kind of groove into. I love the sound of oscillators and drum machines, and even tremolo and all sorts of things which are very rhythmic. So um, you know motorcycles.
Motorcycles. I have to get something straight, because I was conferring with your PR management, and they wanted me to give you time slots in British time. Don't know why. But you are still based in New York City, aren't you?
Yes, I think that was just maybe because we were in Britain, and then we're over here now in mainland Europe, and yeah, so I don't know.
And now you also see where I'm going with this. So would you say that there is, in some way or another, a certain part of your sound that is very New York?
Uh, I don't know. I mean, there must be. It's like you definitely get influence from wherever you live, and there's definitely tons of amazing New York artists, and so those people inspire me, and go to shows all the time in New York. But I don't know. I've always felt a little bit kind of disconnected in a sort of way, and just found it more of like from a real personal kind of place, and that's even influenced from bands from all over the world and stuff. But like bands that I even really liked when I first started playing music, there's a lot of influence in that, and old punk stuff and all sorts of things, really. But I mean, New York is a special place where things are really hectic and really kind of crazy and wild and always changing, and that's, I guess, the where my heart is.
Could you imagine living in any other city or place?
I dream about it a lot. I think I don't know. There's lots of places which like look really cool and seem really awesome, and I can kind of imagine being. But I don't know. New York is so much like home.
I was asking that because when I listened to, I once again tried to go through all of your records, and I felt like, yeah, that is some kind of what the urban feel of New York is. And I think that's very rare, because most people nowadays associate New York with something very, very other than shoegaze or noise rock or whatever we want to call it. But there is something that about a place to bury strangers that sounds very much like New York, in a way that it's a very, very urban sound, a very, very, a place that only fits to a city. I think when listening to your records, I cannot imagine you doing that somewhere in upstate New York.
They wouldn't like it.
The cows wouldn't like it, yes. On your new record, you got a track with a very programmatic title and a very, very interesting title, Bad Idea. And you also say, like, I've got a bad idea. You repeat this over and over again on the track. How do you yourself notice, okay, that idea here, it's not going to work?
I mean, I think that's sort of like what is common all the time is you have like self-doubt and, kind of worrying. And that's sort of just a common sort of thing that you would kind of constantly be thinking. Maybe that keeps and propels things forward in a sort of positive way. But, I think that's just totally natural to just be, at least for me, to just be like, this isn't going to be, good. And so, there you go, just connecting with those kinds of thoughts and that reality.
Yeah, but when you write your songs, where does your inner quality control kick in?
I mean, we'll write tons of songs. things, and then certain things seem to kind of fit together, and you know, you'll play some of these songs even live or play them together, and you know, there's just a certain point at which you're like, oh, this is really cool, and this kind of works, and this is, you know, what kind of goes together and you know, meets up with this whole idea. Every single time we're writing a record, there's always probably like 20 or 30 tracks which don't make it on the record. And since we're like recording and writing our own music all at the same time of these things, we have that luxury to be able to do that.
And does it sometimes happen that you, after a certain while, come back to one of those ideas and say like, okay, now I got it?
Yeah, totally. That happens all the time. You know, and you have to really be afraid to not destroy what you've been working on. You know, that's a very hard thing, I think, to do. And also just not even spend forever on these things. You know, it's like, there was years ago, I would spend years recording a record. And I think that, you know, pretty much with this project, we've never spent forever recording things, and we've just kind of, that sort of worked for us. And I think you get kind of more pure ideas when you do that. It's like, this song has an idea where the lyrics and the music all kind of connect together and make sense together.
Interesting that you mentioned the lyrics, because I also was thinking about those when listening to Synthesizer. Your lyrics have never been in the foreground of a mix, or more or less never been. They're always a little bit behind the instruments. Is that because the lyrics to you are just another layer, or is it because another layer of instrument, so to speak? Or is it because, yeah, you go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's just, for me, that just seems like where things are more natural. You know, I think that all of the instruments and the drums and everything are like really important. And I think a lot of times you hear music where, you know, people really just want to hear the voice and what that is. But I think that instrumentation is amazing and important too. Like, I'll listen to instrumental records and, you know, and think that they're incredible. And all of these elements are so important. And I think for a lot of people, it's maybe more about just being a background for what someone kind of wants to say. But for us, I think our lyrics are a little bit obscured and kind of blurred, and, you know, work with the music itself to kind of come up with one, you know, sort of like the feeling and the idea sort of together in harmony.
So would you say that in contrast to other bands where the music supports the lyrics, in your case, the lyrics support the music?
It's just all together. All of those things are equally important, you know, I think. And, you know, sometimes you don't maybe get as much time to spend on some of those things, but, you know, hey, you know, but I still think that, like, I mean, I love the sound of electric guitar. I love the sound of the bass, and I love the sound of drums, and all of these things. And, you know, I don't know. I listen to a lot of music. I'm not so much of the type of person, I guess, to kind of like listen to a song over and over again and sing along with the words. So I like to hear different kinds of takes on different things, different styles of music, and things from different places. And, you know, even listening to lots of people's like personal demos and these things, or what people have like self-recorded, a lot of times they don't necessarily have the capabilities to like make the lyrics and the vocals be straight up in your face and still sound connected to the music. So they often don't. And that's a lot of the music that is some of my favorite music.
So then I, of course, have to ask, like, what was the last record that really struck you?
What was the last record that really struck me? Let me see. I don't know. I like that Madeline Goldstein record was really cool. I'm not sure what the name is, but it was really cool. That had a bunch of really awesome things in it. There was yeah, I don't know. That's a cool record if you haven't heard it.
Okay. And you say that you also listen to a lot of instrumental music. Would you say that there is a certain different quality to the songwriting if you have such music which is only focusing on the instrumental side?
Yes, of course. Yeah, I mean, and that's, a lot of that, even music, sometimes is even people who are more focused on being like really virtuous to their instruments. And so that's a totally different kind of thing. If you're not like focused on what's the contents of the words, I mean, there are even experimental bands that use the voices just, an instrument in some ways, maybe like Can or something like that, and then, but people who, are just doing things and focused only on the sound of the stuff. It's even like can be such like a soundtrack or something to the world and what's going on. Yeah.
It's interesting that there are so many bands, so many artists and bands that mention German krautrock from the 70s. I'm always surprised. I'm always surprised how influential that scene is and how neglected it is in Germany at the same time. It's like nobody talks about. Never mind. What struck me when I did some research on you and on also your band and everything, and also on Death by Audio, which we'll come to in a moment. Would you describe yourself as a political person?
I don't necessarily know if I wouldn't describe myself as that, but I mean, we get involved in politics sometimes for things. Yeah.
I ask because I was very, very positively surprised by artists and music makers like you, because you have on your webpage for Death by Audio, you have 2 segments about abortion resources and Black Lives Matter. How is that important for you to also show, okay, we are making music, but we have certain ideas and values that we want to stand for?
I think if you have, it's like there's a lot of just kind of like really heinous and terrible things that are kind of going on in this world. And if we have a possibility of a platform to change or do any sorts of thing to help people out in any sort of way, then I think it's the perfect opportunity to just do that. And, we've done that where we've held, different sorts of fundraisers or even played benefit concerts and done all of these sorts of things that we can to try to help doing that if they possibly can. Like people need help out there, and there's good things to stand up for. And if I could at all be of any influence to someone, I'll try to be.
I mean, Death by Audio is a company that, of course, also. I guess that you make more money with Death by Audio than with A Place to Bury Strangers, right? But now let's imagine one of these country leaders with a MAGA hat and the Confederate flag on the pickup truck. Would you sell your gear to those people?
I mean, if it was, I don't know. It all depends. Those different people have different kinds of stories and stuff too. It's like lots of those people get mad at us for different ways. And, I grew up in Virginia, so we knew lots of those kinds of people. And, there's different types of all of those kinds of people too. It's tough. That's a tough conversation as well. It's like, how do you kind of, you want to sort of like show people by example that, the world can be good and gracious and stuff. So, I don't know, if they're kind of like coming at me in some sort of mean way, I would try to, calm them down or something, or, leave. But, we're not, like, I guess, trying to purposefully promote any of that stuff.
Yeah.
It doesn't make you feel good, but but a lot of times people who come from these places, who have some sort of like a lot of hate or something, they're just kind of desperately asking for love and recognition in their life. So I'll always talk to anybody.
But at the same time, I'm very sure that we both would. I can't, you can't, but when having the chance to vote for Kamala or the orangutan, it's pretty clear who we're voting for, right?
Of course, yeah. I'm super excited of the possibility of a woman as the president of the United States.
Yeah. For transparency's sake, for everybody who is listening to this, we are recording 4 weeks before the election, so we don't know whether the Americans have gone totally gaga or whether
We'll
they've
find out
voted
soon
for a
enough.
Democrat. Yeah.
We'll see.
But coming back to Death by Audio, I mean, like, a lot of people know you because of Death by Audio, and it was funny when going to the show here in my hometown that you did not only have a lot of merch for A Place to Bury Strangers, but there were also a lot of pedals that people could buy. And I've seen somebody buy 4 or 5 of them, where I was like, okay.
Yeah.
You have studied industrial design. Was that, or is that in any way helpful for your work? Not in creating the pedals, but really designing the outside stuff and something like that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you really just realized, taking industrial design, that like you could build anything. Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of like a very freeing kind of process of just like, there were so many things that I had no idea of what to do. And then you would go through the processes and figure them out. And then you realize, oh, if I put my mind to anything, you can figure out kind of any sort of problem and figure out what that is. And that just kind of keeps things interesting. And having done that too, it opens up other sorts of possibilities where you're like, oh, this is how they manufacture things out of metal. Here's what I can do with metal. Here's what I can do with plastics or wood or anything. And that's just, I think, that's even like what school is kind of important for, I feel like, a lot of people to just, help them like dream about some other sorts of possibilities, by other people who've had experiences and showing them that stuff. And that's a little bit even what it is like with A Place to Bury Strangers going around and touring. I've seen thousands of bands and all sorts of crazy things. I've lived in warehouses and, seen shows where people are wrestling and setting things on fire and all sorts of stuff. And so if we can bring some of that energy and excitement and show people who haven't had that experience before a little piece of that, then I think that's kind of cool.
You've said, you can build anything. Is that something where you are nowadays sure, like, okay, if somebody approaches me with a certain idea, I can make that work?
Yeah, I think so. I think that, that's, all of those things kind of come together and sort of make some sort of, having that ability and that possibility is that's a great thing. You need that a little bit sometimes, like, just to be dumb enough to dive into something and have it break and fail so that that you can fix it and turn it around.
Death by Audio is a little older, if I remember correctly, is a little older than A Place to Bury Strangers. But the band started not as like a living showroom for your pedals, right? It's just to show like, okay, this is what you can do.
Sorry, I didn't get that. I don't know. It stopped for a second.
No problem. The band didn't start as a living showroom for your pedals, right?
No, not at all. I mean, it was like, I've always been playing music and this kind of music and doing these things. And the band started as just, some people who wanted to play some like-minded music together. And I think even if there wasn't this band, there'd always still be sort of like recording and creating these kinds of things.
Was it difficult to find people to create this kind of music? Because I remember a friend of mine listening to, I think it was your first or second record, and saying like, shit, that is loud. And I was like, what?
Yeah. I mean, I think that, I lucked out. It was like there was people who were already involved in sorts of bands there. And then I even joined a bunch of different bands at the time. And this band was a band in which like these guys had approached me at the show and was like, hey, we're looking for a drummer. We want to start this band that sounds like Slowdive. And I was like, oh, sick, awesome. And I was like, I'll play drums in your band. And then real quickly, I just became the guitar player and songwriter and what was going on. And so, that just completely changed. And just turned into exactly what this is. And then as time has gone on, like different people have left and come into this band, and I've just always kind of geared it towards what this is,
It's interesting to see where you have come from, like A Place to Bury Strangers being a very shoegazy band, a very loud shoegazy band. And now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I hear a lot more post-punk in the records that you've been making lately, and especially on Synthesizer.
Yeah, I
But
don't. Yeah,
let me guess. Let me guess. You don't think about it, right?
I don't think about it. I have no idea. We're just kind of writing songs that we think are like interesting to us at the times, and would express the sort of feelings and ideas that we want to do, and then whichever of those songs sort of somehow form out of I don't know what the primordial ooze of the universe and turn into the songs that seem to make sense. We just listen to the music and have that tell us what to do. So, for all we know, the next record will be something completely different.
Mm-hmm. You say we listen to the music. Does that mean that you record your jam sessions or your sessions in the rehearsal room?
Yeah, sometimes we will. And so sometimes even some of the songs on this record, like, are pretty much just some improvisation with just maybe some additional tracks. So it's sort of like a John Peel session or something.
Yeah. Last question before we get to the infamous quickfire round at the end. You had many, many great artists buying Death by Audio gear. You had some artists that we already had, like Shoo Shoo and Metz. You've also had some even bigger ones, like Radiohead, U2, Nine Inch Nails. Is there like a dream customer where it's like, okay, if that person buys one of my pedals, that's like all-time bucket list?
I don't know. I mean, I think just any of these artists that we freaking like and work with. Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, yeah, at this point, I can't believe it. Any of the artists that have done this, and I think it's far surpassed any of my dreams. I'm not hoping for any other artists to buy them. I think maybe some, young aspiring musicians who want to just make some crazy sounds and something for the future. That's my hope.
My hope for the future is to get even more and more diverse A Place to Bury Strangers music. So thanks for all the insight into that. But nobody leaves the Veil of Sound interviews without having to go through my infamous quickfire round at the end. You
All
will
right, I'm
always
ready.
get two couples, and you have to decide on one of them and give a short explanation.
Okay.
As you are from New York, let's give you some old stuff. Television versus Blondie.
Ooh, what am I supposed to say? Just which one I like better, or
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. That's a tough question. Maybe I would say Blondie. For me, it was like just when I kind of there was something just freaking so sexy about Blondie. I thought was
Oh
so
yeah.
kind of cool, and like was just such a neat kind of I don't know. It took punk in such like a weird kind of chic, sort of cool kind of way, and they were like those songs when I heard them as a kid, it's some like uber pop music or something. But then when you kind of like hear more all about the whole scene and everything that Deborah Harry was doing, I thought she was an icon
Yeah,
and
she
an awesome
definitely
one
is.
too. So yeah.
Yeah. That I mean, like that she is an icon is, I think, yeah, not a question at all, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, totally. Yeah. Yeah. And the movies and stuff, Videodrome and all that stuff. I mean, it's just amazing. So yeah, good
Mm-hmm.
for her.
Um, I was thinking of, like looking for some bands that in some way fit to what you are doing and that also maybe are from New York. So I thought about TV on the Radio versus the John Spencer Blues Explosion.
Oh, I'm gonna say TV on the radio. For me, that was like, I mean, I love John Spencer Blues Explosion too, but TV on the radio was just kind of like coming about right when I sort of moved to New York,
Mm-hmm.
and we would go see them play, and the performances were just wild and so sick. And then they had like a studio down the way. They also, I had like It's just I was honored. They were some of the first people using the Death by Audio pedals. That was sort of like a big kind of name doing these things, and that was really freaking cool. They're always just even part of the scene. Those guys all individually and stuff playing at my place, Death by Audio, and doing these things. That was like something that I really connected with. John Spencer Blues Explosion was kind of just too big for me at those times, or maybe they were just older folks and stuff. And so, but TV on the radio, those shows and stuff, that seemed like a new kind of music when hearing that stuff. And I thought that was awesome.
I also use this as some kind of bridge. You get to choose between Russell Simmons and Russell Simmons. One the guy from the Blues Explosion, one the guy from Run DMC. So which one is more to your liking?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Run DMC. I think I don't know, but it's a tough call. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I don't know. Both of those guys, incredible. Like so much good stuff doing from them. I think, yeah, I don't know. You can't go wrong with either. Right? Once your name is Russell Simmons, I think that you're like set for life of anything you do. So
you can do whatever you want to. Yeah,
exactly. There you go. Yeah.
And I choose this to ask you about New York hip hop because you are roughly my age, and I'm very sure that you were also somehow in touch with hip hop, or at least you got to know a little bit about it, coming from the city of hip hop. KRS-One versus Gang Starr.
I guess I would say KRS-One. I don't know. For me, some of that stuff, was just like, I mean, fuck, that's tough though too. Gang Starr is sick. Yeah, I don't know. There was just, I don't know, some of that kind of like the flow and stuff of KRS-One was so sick. So I don't know. For me, but there was a lot of good New York hip hop. So that's, I don't know. It's tough.
What I also love about KRS-One is that not a lot of people know that it's an acronym. I mean, like, and maybe it's the best one ever. That's something that I really like about it. Using this hip hop to come to also back to New York and another band that I really like, and I'm very sure you also like. Which element about the Beastie Boys did you like more? The real hip hop tracks or the jazz and punk stuff, the instrumentals that they did, for example?
I mean, I think it's just changed on the different years of which I was getting into this stuff, So it was like at first it was sort of like the kind of funky hip hop stuff. And then I was like, oh, but they're a freaking punk band. And then I was like sold. I was like, oh, this is so sick.
Yeah.
This is wild. And then, you hear some of those freaking songs and it freaking sets a party off. So, I don't know. I think that they did so many good things and so many cool things. Like, thank God for the Beastie Boys.
Yeah. Although I could have gone a little longer, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
A few more questions. Mission of Burma versus Gang of Four.
I would say Gang of Four. For me, I feel like Gang of Four just had more material that was like so crazy and so cool and kind of wild. Mission of Burma, great as well, but it was just like maybe not quite as many directions and having quite as much diversity as Gang of Four.
Last two. Something very off. Very off.
Okay.
But Godflesh versus Napalm Death.
I would say Napalm Death. I don't know. They're just like, we saw them recently and the show was freaking sick. If you had asked me 2 months ago, I'm not sure what I would have said, but Napalm Death show was freaking wicked when we saw them. So, that definitely secured Napalm Death for me. Cool. Like even like a band, which is like doing things politically. You were talking about that before, just like making sure that they tell their crowd like what's right and what's good is fucking awesome.
Yeah. And now two big couples, Radiohead versus U2.
I mean, I don't know. I would say Radiohead, like U2, they had a bunch of old kind of cool classics and that was kind of cool, and that's like you hear some of those songs when you're driving around the US and you're like, thank God for this that you choose on the radio. But
Yeah.
Radiohead, I think that they just kind of changed something so much for music and had something that was like such a style that got pushed forward of their own. And, things like Johnny Greenwood's creativity and stuff is
Yeah.
just like absolutely amazing. And, I think that is like a important part of music today.
Yeah. And also one of a few bands that are still together in the same in the same group of people. No change.
Pretty wild. Yeah, that's pretty wild. That's very difficult to have to say from a band who's had many different members in it. Very difficult. So hats off to them.
Yeah. Last question, and that is one of those New York questions. Sonic Youth, what would you rather listen to right now? One of their earlier albums or one of their later albums? Like rather Ripped versus, let's say, Daydream Nation.
Daydream Nation. I'm an old school like all of that stuff. I love that stuff. All of their, whatever it is, maybe their first like 9 albums or something are just like super dear to my heart. So that stuff is just always cool. It just transports me back to, being a kid and having a good time with friends and all of that stuff and all of the bands and music and stuff we were trying to do and friends were trying to do. That's that stuff.
Well, I think A Place to Bury Strangers is on a very, very good way. Definitely. I think very, very good directions we're going. So, Oliver, thanks for your time. Thanks for all the details.
Thank you so much.
And enjoy your evening in Warsaw.